So hello everyone, my name is Nathan Chung and my co-host is Bandana. Welcome to Peerless Peer Talk, and today's topic we're covering male allies cybersecurity. So today's speakers we have Shane Portfolio, he is Senior Vice President at Comcast. Wolfgang Goerlich, he's Advisory CISO at Cisco. Christophe Foulon, he's Lead Cybersecurity Cyber Risk Consultant at Conquest Federal. Jonathan Hard, CEO of H2L Solutions, and Ken Underhill, founder of Swirl Funnel Consulting. So to start, based on the latest report from IC Square, women make up roughly 24% of the cybersecurity workforce. Today, we are here to discuss what all of our speakers have done to support women and how men can be better allies for women. So let's get started. So, Shane, let's start with you. What do you do to support women's cybersecurity?
Yeah, good morning, Nathan. Yeah, I do a few things because in order to support women in a underserved 24% type of demographic, you have to be really intentional about how you go about making sure that you continue on an upward trajectory to where they get to a place where they're a lot more closer to the 50% number. So we have a lot of room ahead of us in terms of getting to that target. Essentially, we have to double the amount, in my opinion, to really get to where we need to be. And what you have to do to really do that is you have to be a sponsor, an advocate, and be available for women that are interested in pursuing this career and making sure that they know they're not going to be alone when they do it. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm in a PhD program, and my dissertation is about women in technology. So I study this phenomenon all the time. And the analysis will tell you that it's not really a lack of interest, it's a lack of inclusion or feeling respected or feeling as if their voice is treated with the same respect as their male counterparts. And so what we have to do as leaders is make sure we're intentional about making any women that want to be a part of this technology industry, cybersecurity industry, feel respected, feel safe, and feel like they have people that are going to be their sponsor. So I spend about 40% of my time mentoring and sponsoring women and making sure that I'm available for them as they pursue their desires in cybersecurity. If you don't do that and it's just something that you do in a happenstance way or you're not as intentional about it, I've seen that doesn't really result in any progress. So you really have to take your time, be incredibly intentional about it, and make yourself available to be a leader and a sponsor for them so they feel comfortable joining the organization. And that's what I do. Like I said, about 40% of my time is spent doing that.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Shane. I'm very happy that you do all that stuff. Next, Wolf, how about you? What do you do to support women's cybersecurity?
Yeah, thank you so much for putting this panel together and having me on. You know, it's something I spend a great deal of time thinking about and talking about, predominantly because every time I've been on a high performance team, every time I've built a high performance team, it's had a good mix of men and women, anywhere from 10 to 50% of the team being comprised of women. Most recently, my recent team that I had was 50-50, which was fantastic. Most recently, I was running an apprenticeship for many years for cybersecurity, and I like to think that the deliberate ways we went about addressing a lot of things we just heard in terms of making sure women felt comfortable, had a place at the table, their voices were heard and amplified. I like to think that apprenticeships played a small part in this rise we've seen in women industry going from 10% 10 years ago up to a quarter today. So what do I do? I mean, there's a number of things, right? And a lot of this seems kind of basic. You listen to women, you listen to your friends, your coworkers, you listen to women on social media. You get an idea of the kind of problems they're facing and what's going on. And it can be very eye-opening when you start doing that because you realize it is so different from the experience that a lot of us on this panel have had. You learn from some of the research into women in the workforce. Studies into hiring and promotion, you learn what some of those challenges are so you can target it. You amplify what you hear to get those other voices heard. And then, you know, you'll apply what you learn from listening and studying to do what you can to reduce barriers, reduce friction, reduce inequality. Barriers in entry into the community, into conferences, into our careers, friction in the environments that you're leading or overseeing, friction from sexism, from microaggressions, those sort of things, and inequality through promoting equal pay, equal access, and fundamentally, and you'll hear me come back to this theme a lot as we talk about the panel through this panel, is approaching these problems systematically so that you can address inequality across all areas. So after that, it's getting feedback. Did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? Where did I screw up? Not everything. Yeah, it's true. I mean, not everything you think is good allyship is good allyship.
All true.
And without that feedback, it's not necessarily going to help you be a good ally. So to sum up, listen, learn, amplify, apply what you know to reduce barriers, and get feedback, and then repeat the process.
Beautiful. Those are great tips, Wolf. Next, Christophe, how about you? What do you support women cybersecurity?
Some of the things that I do start from the grassroots side of things, not necessarily that high in many of the organizations that I've been in. So I tend to focus starting at the bottom, helping mentor women, helping them feel comfortable, helping them with any questions or concerns, and being that support for them. I think many times within a male-dominated society, if they don't have that support, that ally to be there for them, that they can have a sounding board that they can talk to, that's definitely one of the main things that I do. I provide coaching on the side, and I typically love to promote women on my podcast, Breaking Into Cybersecurity. I try to ensure that's a great platform for them, as well as in social media. I help promote and speak about open equality, changing job descriptions to ensure that they promote diversity, neurodiversity, as well as gender diversity, and try to do anything I can from the grassroots side of things.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christophe. Next, Jonathan, how about you? What do you do to help women?
Yeah, so I'm in a unique position when it comes to helping women. So I own my own business, and what I do is I hire them. So I mean, look, as men, we need to realize women want the same thing as we do: good pay, professional development opportunities, the chance to give back or contribute to the community, and then become leaders within the industry. And I encourage females to do that, and also to get into cybersecurity. There's a lot of females that still think that the roles that they play within society are the professional wise, nurses or teachers, and that's just not the case. And it is really sad that in the 40s and the 50s, as a country, that was pretty much the profession if you were a female. And so I think from a culture perspective, we're doing a lot better from getting into the schools and letting our daughters and letting females understand that that's not what you have. There is no cookie cutter roadmap anymore. You can be anything, and that's the thing that I have a daughter. That's the thing that I instill in her. Is like, you can be an astronaut, whatever you want to be. Put your mind to it, execute it, and then go forth and become that thing. I volunteer my time with women-focused non-for-profit organizations, and I speak publicly about opportunities in cyber specifically because the gap is so wide from a female perspective. There's not that many females in cybersecurity, and so over 50% of our employees are females in cybersecurity, and we've had a lot of females come over from the airline industry, the forestry industry. They come in with these high professional degrees, and I sit down there and I look at them, and I'm like, wow, they're smart, they're motivated, they're passionate, and they want to do a career change into cybersecurity. And a lot of these other larger companies look at that as a huge investment that they would have to put into that individual because they don't have the technical background that would be an easy transition for that individual to just come into cybersecurity. Well, being the size we are, I make that investment, and so we've changed 5 to 10 females sort of directories just because we sit down there and we're like, yeah, you might not have the right cybersecurity certification, you might not have the right cybersecurity technical degree, but you have the drive, the passion, the fortitude, and the motivation to learn all of that. And so we have 2 different programs within the company. One's a policy and procedural program for cybersecurity, and the other one's a technical program. And we have some very subject matter experts in both. And so we'll plug them into one of those programs and they'll learn. On the job training, in my opinion, is one of the fastest ways to become very competent in cybersecurity. So we match them up with subject matter experts in one of those 2 fields, and they start learning. And some of the best cybersecurity professionals that we have hired in the past 6 years have been females who come in with very, very little knowledge of cybersecurity, and then we train them because they're so hungry. They're so hungry to learn and so hungry to give back, and then actually execute at a different level than someone who would be coming right out of college with a cybersecurity degree and a couple certifications.
That's a good point, and I really look at what you do, Christophe. Thank you. Next is Jonathan. What do you do to help women in cybersecurity?
I'm talking, Nathan.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. And last but not least, Ken, what do you do to support women?
Sure. First off, thanks, Nathan, for having me on. Thanks, everyone else, for what you're doing for women in the industry. I focus primarily on mentoring, so I'm sort of that guy that will help you plan out what you actually want to do in the industry. I'll ask you certain questions on your interests and that sort of stuff. And then I'm that guy that also takes those late night phone calls when you're facing challenges, getting in or working through different issues in the job when you finally get it in the industry as a woman. So primarily mentoring. Many people probably see me doing shout outs on LinkedIn as well as on my podcast. I think it's important to have a platform where women can be showcased, right? So when let's say I was a female trying to look at this industry, thinking maybe I want to do that, but maybe I can't, I'm not smart enough or whatever, but I see someone like Katie Adine or Tamiko Evans, and I see what their journey's been, their challenge has been, and I say, oh, well, they're kind of like me, right? They have a similar background or whatever. I can do this too. And so I think that's a critical component of it. And I've also seen at conferences that as men, and this may be a later question that's brought up, but as men, oftentimes we can see a woman kind of standing there in the corner, a little shy or a little nervous about approaching a table where people are doing activities. I had this recently at a conference, and several of us were just playing some games, a gaming thing, and I just said, hey, come on over, let's learn. And she was like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, right? I'm in a program, I'm trying to learn. I was like, sit down, we're going to walk you through it. And she had a great time and learned a lot of stuff and was able to actually see the application of the things she was learning in a academic program. So I think mentoring on my angle is probably the primary thing that I do. And I really just really try to showcase women and show people looking at the industry that, yes, you can do this. You don't have to have a strong math or science background or anything that people traditionally think. Anyone can come into this industry from any background and be successful.
That's wonderful, Ken. Thank you for your support. And thank you all. Next, Bandana will cover mentorship.
Thank you so much, Nathan. And thanks to all the wonderful speakers and male allies to join us today. On mentorship, women are often actually told to find a mentor. But some women might feel uncomfortable having a man as a mentor. So, what can a man offer to a woman as a mentor? Because when they start looking out for mentors, they have a lot of questions in their mind, conscious biases they have. So, let's start with you, Jonathan. What should or what can a man offer to a woman as a mentor?
Yeah, thanks, Bandana. I appreciate it. It's a good question. So, a couple different answers. First, if that female or if that woman it does not have any weirdness or does not feel, I guess, weird about having a male mentor, well, then that opens up a lot more things that you can do. But if she does, and you can tell she has maybe some uncomfortableness about that, then you sit down and the best thing to do, in my opinion, is just be authentic, be real, and explain to her, how society currently is. Right now, unfortunately, it still is, in the industry that I work in, which is the Department of Defense contracting. It's still a very, very, very heavy male dominant environment from a work perspective. And there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's still a lot of sexism that is in that environment. And so sit down with them and tell them, look, you're getting into the Department of Defense contracting industry, cybersecurity realm. These are things that might happen. These are things that have happened to past females that have worked for me, going to conferences, going to public speaking engagements, going to networking events. Be prepared for that. And I always have had the best feedback whenever I'm real with them. And then what we do is, like, if this happens, this is what you do. Never go anywhere by yourself. Always go with a buddy to these events. And then don't be egotistical about it. I'm no better than a woman. I'm not. And I might have some different skill sets from a cybersecurity perspective about how to navigate through the cybersecurity world than she might at that time. But I guarantee you, in the next couple of years, she'll be just as good as myself, maybe even better. And so, giving the tools, giving the correct tools for her to implement in her cybersecurity career and her trajectory is very invaluable. So in teaching them about the current culture of whatever industry that they're going to get in. It might be different from a commercial perspective, but I know the industry that I'm in, it's very important to treat them as a fellow colleague and then give them the tools that they need in order to succeed. If the female or the woman is still uncomfortable, then what I do is I assign them another female mentor that's in our company that's already worked with me as a mentor for a couple of years, and she's ready to take over as a mentor. And that's the thing, getting enough females in the industry where they don't have to have male mentors anymore. And that's something that we're doing. We're just trying to create these awesome cybersecurity female mentors, so that the role of a man mentor, hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years won't be as common.
Yeah, wonderful inputs. Thank you so much, Jonathan. You've put in a lot of thoughts, and especially the examples that you gave are very relevant. How about you, Christopher?
Well, some of the things that I do when it comes to mentorship, I show them the value of having a different perspective. All too often, we find that cybersecurity is an echo chamber, and it is an echo chamber because everyone has the same perspective. When we have individuals from different backgrounds, different cultures, different genders, they provide that different perspective that is so valuable for a holistic cybersecurity system to be successful. So I show them that there is value in having that different perspective and how they can help. I help them with highlighting transferable skills if they're coming from a different industry, or even if a different job role that they're looking at something new, show them how they already have many of the skills that they will need to be successful, but they maybe hadn't have thought of it in that way. So I help them highlight those transferable skills that will make them successful. I provide positive reinforcement for them. They might be having imposter syndrome. They might be very successful themselves, but with that imposter syndrome, they feel they might not be good enough. So I help with that positive reinforcement. I help prepare them for interviews, or help them with their resume. I promote them on different platforms, show them examples of other successful women in the industry, because they might not know who they are. And us being in the industry, we know who they are. So we can show them of examples that they can look up to, as well as make introductions to them so that they do feel comfortable when they are going to conferences or different events. Be that buddy for them there. Show them that it is a welcoming environment. And if there are unsavory characters there, stand up for them. show the other men in the room that this is not good behavior, and make an example that this should not be tolerated anywhere. When it comes to preparing for talks, because sometimes they feel that they might not be at that level where they can share something, show them that everyone has stories that they can tell, and if they're able to come to terms that they do have value and they can share those stories, show them how they're that example for other people following behind them, because that's what will just help the industry even propel having women being more inclusive.
Yeah, agree with you. You've actually brought a very wonderful topic of imposter syndrome, because I've been in discussion with a lot of people around, and not just women but men also imposter syndrome. And you bringing this up and talking about it is commendable. And diversity is based on culture, based on ethnicity. There are so many things associated, and you embracing it. Even cybersecurity itself is composed of diversity, and we all have to embrace. Thank you so much. So up next we have Nathan, and Nathan will talk about the Me Too movement, which is hard, uh, and which is actually not many people talk about it, because there is a air going on wherein everyone is talking about Me Too, but then nobody is discussing over it. So over to you, Nathan.
Yep, thank you, Bandana. So yes, with the Me Too movement, unfortunate, the unfortunate part of the Me Too movement is some men might avoid talking to women, or be afraid to be alone with a woman in the same room for fear of being accused of a crime later. So what tips do you have for men who feel this way and avoid women? Let's start with Wolf.
Sure. First, I think it's a sad question to ask, isn't it? I mean, here's the thing. Let me step away from security for just a minute. Like a lot of people in this industry, I grew up a nerd. I grew up a nerd, and that meant I spent a ton of time in the library, right? I loved my books. And so you're at the library, and you're a kid, and there's another kid being loud, and they're running and whatnot, and the librarian hushes them. You don't feel the need to take, not all readers. You don't need to like defend the readers. You know that that's someone doing something they shouldn't do. And hopefully maybe you say something to the kid yourself at some point in time. I think fundamentally, most men know when they cross that line. And I get very concerned when people feel the need to hashtag not all men, just like I would be concerned if someone's hashtagging not all readers. You know if you're doing something inappropriate. And if you're a man and you're unsure how to be in a room with a woman, you're unsure how to have your one-on-one with your subordinate as a woman, um, you know, ask your woman friends. And if you don't have friends who are women, start there. As I stressed in my earlier answer, it's all about learning, listening, and applying. Also, I think, and with respect to my other panelists, stop thinking about air quote females, right? But I suggest we stop saying female altogether. I think we really need to start thinking about our friends, our colleagues, and people we work with. The future of the workforce is blended. The future of the workforce is going to be this blend of dynamic and different people, much like we even see on this panel, people from different backgrounds, different countries, different perspectives, different genders, different ages. And fundamentally, a very important life skill to succeed in the current and future economy is mastering working with people who aren't you. And that includes getting over concerns about Me Too, includes getting over concerns about how do I act when there are women in the room.
That's one for Wolf. Thank you. Next, Shane, how about you? So, how do you feel about Me Too affecting what men do and being afraid to be with them?
All right, Nathan. First of all, you have to just be cognitively aware that it is something that people are sensitive to, both men and women. And so, what you have to do, I believe, is be empathetic to that, understand it, not ignore it, but be thoughtful about how you approach meeting. So meeting in a place where both parties feel safe, right? Meeting in a place, you're in a cafe or you're in a place where you are, visibly seen by more than just the two people engaged in the conversation. And if you can do that, you can make sure people feel a little bit more at ease and a little more comfortable being in a discussion. I think it's important for men to be a bit more empathetic to how women feel, more so than men being fearful of their own securities around what could potentially happen. And if you're empathetic, you think through the lens of a woman and how she feels being in a discussion like that, and you provide her a safe space where she can be her authentic self without feeling uncomfortable, then you typically find yourself feeling as comfortable and you can have a genuine conversation. When you put women in a position where they're in an uncomfortable place, you can feel it. Even if nothing happens that's inappropriate, you can still feel a tendency of being a little bit awkward. So do everything you can to be intentional about finding a space that everybody feels comfortable, and make sure that you do that with great respect and great empathy. And I think women then become more comfortable, and ultimately they become more transparent and open because they're in a space where they can be their authentic self. That's really what you have to do, and you do have to be thoughtful about it. And if you do, I think the women appreciate the fact that you went to the degree you did to care for that component of it. And ultimately, what that will do for the men is result in the same thing, where you don't feel uncomfortable because you're in a space that everybody feels safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Shane. And thank you, Wolf, as well. It was a wonderful answer that I really like what you both of you just said, and it makes a lot of sense. Next, we have Vandana. She will talk about conferences.
My question is for Ken and Christophe. When women attend cybersecurity conferences, some of them don't feel safe. What can men do to help and overcome this anxiety? We are not safe at the conferences, or we have to have someone alongside with us when we are going to any of the conferences.
I think number one, if you're a man and you're sort of mentoring and that sort of stuff, like what I do is I tell people like, hey, I'm going to be at this conference, and I think that gives at least a measure of a safety net to a woman that's attending that conference, saying, okay, well, I've interacted with this person, they've always been receptive and helping me through social media or whatever. Okay, let me track them down at the conference so I know I have at least one ally. But honestly, I think from what I've seen at many conferences, I like to call myself a geek, but I'm also an introvert, right? So for me, I'm a lot more outgoing than I used to be. And I think there's a lot of men at these conferences that are just kind of geeky, and they're not necessarily like, um, I can't think of like the correct terminology, but they're not necessarily very good in like, they haven't had a lot of experience in like relationships. So they haven't been around women quite so much as mostly like workplace, that sort of thing. So they're really awkward. And I think as men like that, it's really just kind of making sure that you're receptive. So, for example, if you see like a woman kind of standing in the corner just observing whatever fun activity you guys are doing in your little circle, or maybe a CTF challenge or something like that, invite her over. Say, hey, you wanna join in? We'll show you what to do if you don't know how to do pen testing or whatever. So I think this, from a male standpoint, just identifying, being more aware of what's going on at these conferences, and identifying women that are maybe they seem maybe hesitant to join the crowd, so to speak, and just reaching out to them and say, hey, you wanna come over here and do the CTF challenge, or hey, come on over, join our conversation, and asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
It's challenging for a man, especially if you aren't very outgoing. But I think if we can just take that up on ourselves to do so. So the two points there. Number one, if you're a woman and you already have sort of connected with different men on LinkedIn, and they're going to that conference, and you feel they're quality individuals, try to track them down at the conference. Most of them should be receptive to that. And then number two, being from the male standpoint, just be more aware at these conferences and try to identify if there's someone that looks uncomfortable, male or female, and invite them over to your group to try to get them more engaged in the actual overall community.
And for me, I like to encourage them from from the beginning, even before they're at the conference, invite them in, show them the value at being at these conferences and how it can help their career, how it can help expand their knowledge, how it can help them with networking, because a lot in this industry is really done through networking. They can meet their future employers, they can meet their future colleagues, they can meet other supporters in the environment. So I really encourage them to go to these events so that they can see the value that they can gain from them. And then once you're there, welcome them. Be the one to engage with them, be the one to show them how to make the most of the value once they are there. And if there are those individuals that um, display negative behavior, stand up for them. As I mentioned earlier, this should not be tolerated at all, whether it's bullying from a man or a woman. That type of behavior is not tolerated. So stand up for them and show them that this is a welcoming community and there's a lot to learn.
Wonderful thoughts. So, did you, either of you, ever felt uncomfortable or feel uncomfortable in any of the events which you have attended?
I would say yes. I mean, I've been an introvert my whole life, and
Mhm.
it actually it took me a long time to feel comfortable at these events. And most of the time, it's because I find someone that I know at the event that I can go over, that I can talk to. So having gone through those experiences myself, I try to do the same for others, make them feel welcome so that they do feel the value in going to those events.
And same thing here.
Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
naturally an introvert as well, and I think Chris summed it up very well there. Just finding someone you know or someone that you're familiar with, even through via social media or something, just seeing that individual and being able to go up and just have a conversation, it usually just relaxes you, and then you have a better time at the conference. So yeah, if you're out there listening to this, definitely just try to figure out who's going to the conference, and then that way you can have those conversations and really enjoy the events.
Yeah. So on the same lines, there are a lot of communities and the groups are actually talking about women in culture. Like we have to have women in security, women in AppSec, women in tech, women in. There are so many tags associated with it. So, what are your inputs of on the women in culture?
So for me, I think it was Wolf summed it up pretty well. Like these are our friends, right? These are our friends. We consider them family. I don't think it. I think we're in a wrong state of mind if we always have to say women in. Like it should automatically be women in, men in. So that's my perspective on it. I don't. I think it's fine to label. Like I'm very secure as a male. If something says women in or women only, I'm not concerned with that. But I think that as an overall cybersecurity culture, it should already be inclusive. And I know it's not always, but I think it should be already. We shouldn't have to, we should get ourselves to a point where it's not labeling certain ways, right? It should just be cybersecurity and everyone's included.
Hmm. Right.
I, I mean, I see the value in having some of those women in events where women can feel a little safer with um, their counterparts being at those events. But let's not forget, like, women can be bullies too. And if they feel that they're going to be outperformed by someone at these events, maybe they can display negative attitudes too. The other thing that I think is if we're going to have an all-inclusive blended society, we need to have that all the time. And by segregating ourselves to these women or men only events, it doesn't help with that inclusiveness. It doesn't help with that blending. Because when they do go back out into events that are blended, they might not feel comfortable. So the more that they can go to blended events, the more that they can feel comfortable and start to shine at those types of events.
Mm. Right. Uh, that's a good. Um, Ken, when did you feel that you should start supporting women in cyber initiatives?
So, I mean, I've always been an advocate for women throughout any career I've done. And, I just kind of noticed, like when I started my podcast, I noticed that a lot of the podcasts out there, they focused on like oh, a data breach or whatever. And I was like, I think we just need to give value to the humans, right? It's humans that make up this industry, not a bunch of, there's technology in use, but it's just not a bunch of robots. And so for me, it's just, I've always been an advocate of women, especially women in technology, and it was just kind of a natural transition to then start pushing more awareness about the challenges women have faced, along with the successes they've had as they've moved through their careers in the industry.
And for me, I've always had strong women leaders and colleagues throughout my career. So I've never looked at it any differently. I've seen that they were in the minority and a smaller part of the population. But to tell you the truth, the women that have always been throughout my career, they've been outperformers 10 to 1 than their male colleagues. So I always encourage more women into the industry because I think once they get over that shyness or that imposter syndrome, they really shine, and I think that benefits us all because I look at it as a human immune system. If everyone's not performing at their greatest, it will implode.
Right. So before I hand it over to Nathan to cover the last segment, I just want to ask Jonathan, Wolf, or Shane, do you want to share any inputs on it? When did you start feeling that you should support these women in cybersecurity initiatives?
For me, as an executive, my objective is to build teams that are going to differentiate themselves in terms of performance. And every single time where we've had a more inclusive, more distributed kind of parity in terms of gender, we've always outperformed the organizations where that wasn't the case. So at the end of the day, if my objective is to build teams that win, then I need to make an intentional effort to be more inclusive, because when we do, that's what ends up happening. So for me, it's always been with the lens of how do you build the best high performance team you possibly can. And in every turn, that means you need to make sure that you have a very equally distributed gender workforce, because every single time that happens, you get a better result. So that's what I try to do to make sure we continue to build the best team we possibly can.
Thank you so much. Yeah, please go ahead.
Wolf, I want to definitely echo what I just heard. I mean, from a industry and career perspective, it is about getting the best people in and building the best possible teams you can. And just like what was just said, my experience over the past 20 years has been the exact same. Whenever you've got a good mix, and you've got the right mix, you've got a high performing team. So from an industry perspective, I absolutely agree. From a community perspective, having started user groups, having run conferences, spending probably more time than I should on Twitter, the community is very important to me, and addressing situations where people do not feel welcome, addressing situations where people are not treated fairly, addressing situations where there is a portion of the community that is being toxic or holding down the potential of all of us. That's an area that personally I spend a great deal of time doing what I can to address. And it's frankly why I'm on this panel.
Thank you. Yeah, totally with you on that. So I will hand it over to Nathan to cover the last segment of our panel discussion.
Thank you, Vedana. So we would like to conclude with tips from all of our speakers on how men can be allies for women in cybersecurity. Looking for everyday tips. Let's start with Ken. What tips do you have for all the men who will be listening to this podcast?
I think number one is going to be awareness. So like I said, when I talked about the conferences, just being mindful of, is this person needing help? Do they look awkward, out of place? I think on social media, leveraging what your knowledge is, looking at posts by women or others in the industry and seeing what kind of value you can add in there. I think specifically from a leadership standpoint, if you're a male in a hiring manager type of position, I forget if it was Jonathan or Wolf, but I like what they said about having those programs that they can take a woman from some other industry, and they've already got those built out in their company where they can plug you in and get you on the career path into cybersecurity and some policies or on the more technical side. So I think just having things like that, building those out. If you're a company owner, like I do have a consulting company I own, so for me, I try to incorporate. It's targeted towards business owners, but I try to incorporate more women into that as well. So I think really just figuring out what your strengths are or what you can offer as a male, and then identifying who you can help with those. And that might be creating a podcast, that might be just posting on social media, that might be creating different training programs in your company, it could be hiring people, etc. So a lot of ways you can do it. I think you just need to take a moment as a male and identify your strengths and what you can contribute, and then just go out there and actually apply it.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Next, Jonathan, what tips do you have what everyday tips do you have for men?
So I say, as a leader in the industry, once you create a reputation as a leader in the industry from a cybersecurity perspective and trust, then it's about always be willing to help. Always, life is too short to be always on the go, go, go. These are other people. These are people's lives, and they want to make a change, and they want to come into the cybersecurity industry. So just in the back of your mind, we're all in positions where we can help and be advocates and actually make change, and then be willing to give back when you get in that position of influence. Take the time. If someone comes and gives you a resume, whether they're male or female, take the time, look at it, and see if there's something there where you can help. It might not be with your company, it might be with another company. I all the time send resumes, both male and female, to other companies that other leaders of the industry that I know of, because we might not have something at the time for that individual. So the biggest thing is having a big heart, wanting to help the country, wanting to help the cybersecurity industry, and bring more professionals into it.
That's wonderful, Jonathan. The next, Christophe.
Well, as everyone has mentioned so far, I mean, promote an inclusive environment, show them that they're welcome, promote them on social media, encourage them at work, encourage them in your personal life, that this is an industry that they can be successful in. If they have that imposter syndrome, be there for them, show them the value that they bring. And if you're looking for a mentor, be welcoming. Show them that what they can do to be successful, help them be successful, help them by finding examples or introducing them to other women that they can look up to, that they can be inspired by, and then encourage them to do the same as they get into the industry, help others, because that's going to be the way that we're going to be successful, by everyone helping each other.
Yep, totally agree. Yep, totally agree. So next we have Christophe.
I think I just went.
Oh, thanks. Next we have Shane.
Yeah, I think it really starts with your genuine, authentic commitment to being available and being a sponsor for women. And so when you put yourself out there, either via a meeting or a conference or something like that, where you encourage them to reach out to you because you want to be an advocate for them, when they have the courage to do that, make sure that you follow through with what you said you were going to, and be there and be available to support them. And what happens when you do that is the power of word of mouth is incredible. They'll tell their other female colleagues that I reached out, and they actually followed through, and we had this incredible discussion, and they were authentic and genuine about what they said. And the next thing you know, it creates this cascading effect where the genuine authenticity of that commitment becomes something that they look to and they count on. And then you create this energy and this overwhelming desire for folks to want to connect. And as a few of my colleagues mentioned earlier, Then you get a couple of the really courageous women to be the trailblazing kind of initial women that come into a conversation. You really mentor them, but then you mentor them in the capacity that they become mentors, and then they create mentees, and then it just becomes this incredible journey that everybody starts to feel more included and want to be a part of a team. And so in my organization, we have 11,000 people, about 150 leaders. When I started 5 years ago, it was about 120 men, 30 women. Now we're about 90 men, 60 women. So we're getting closer. We're not quite at parity, but that real change was a result of this really cascading kind of domino effect that started with being genuine and saying, I really want to do this, and then being accountable to what you say. It's amazing what happens from there.
Totally agree, Shane. I really like what you said about authenticity and the cascading effect. And last but not least, Wolf.
In addition to some of the great tips we just heard, I think it's important to start addressing the inequality from a systems perspective. There's always a bell curve. There's a bell curve with the men in our workforce. There's a bell curve with the women in our workforce, and I think understanding that and approaching that is important. So, for example, there's a study in American Economic Review a while back that found that women were volunteering at a higher rate for non-promotable tasks, right? So women were being asked to take these tasks on, they're volunteering, they're doing them, but it didn't necessarily contribute to their career. I saw that study and thought about that study in the context of the team I was running and in the context of the apprenticeship that I was running. I think a bad approach is to ignore it, obviously. Just let the women do the work, no problem. That's clearly bad. But a neutral approach, and not much better, I think, is to be aware of this research and then use that as a way to limit what the women could do or could volunteer for. In our world, what we did was we were aware of that research. We were aware of the bell curve for men and women behavior, and I was concerned that maybe some men were doing this. Maybe some women were volunteering for things that they saw more value in for FaceTime, and I might not see it as promotable. And so what we did was we put in place a system to effectively track who was volunteering for what and make sure that that was leveled across the entire team or across the entire academy. I think that's the approach we need to take. If you want to be a good ally, right, you need to use your position, you need to use your power in a way that reduces barriers to entry and creates systems of equality and effectively reduce that tension in the workforce. As I said earlier, the future is a very diverse population, and the more that we, the leaders, can get ahead of that curve, the better we're all going to be.
Wonderful, Wolf. That's incredible. Okay, so to wrap up, we thank all of our guests today for their insights and sharing their experiences. It was great, and it's wonderful to hear from each and every one of you. I hope this helps men to be better allies to women and to drive for better diversity and inclusion. We also like to thank Peerlyst for hosting this Peer Talk, and Bandana just notified me that was International Men's Day, so I think it's coincidence.
Yeah, so from my side, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And as Nathan mentioned, belated Happy International Men's Day, and for being one male allies, for bringing up the topic generally people fear in discussing. Like, they really fear, if I say this, what will happen? If I do this, what will happen? So today we have discussed all such topics, and looking forward to connecting with all of you in the future podcasts, and probably meeting you at the conferences. Thank you. And thank you, Nathan
Like that.
and
Thank you,
Perilous.
everyone.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you, everyone.